Tonight, Hong Kong's chief stands firm amid financial crisis in the territory. Pol Pot pleads innocence in his first interview for almost 20 years. And will two controversial movies on Tibet ever be shown in Hong Kong? Good evening, Rosemary Church with Australia Television News. A disastrous day for Hong Kong today, the main stock index taking its worst plunge since the worldwide markets crash a decade ago. Tonight, analysts said Hong Kong's fight to hold its currency peg against the American dollar had only just started, and that the stock market was expected to plunge even further as Japanese investors pulled out. But Hong Kong executive Tung Chee-hwa said his government was determined to maintain the peg.
To do this, we have signaled to the market our determination. The interest rate has gone up, and as a result of that, there is a short-term repercussion on the stock market, and this is to be expected. But on the stock market side, all our major companies have very good performance. Their growth in profit is all double-digit, and the fundamentals, again, very good, basically because the Hong Kong economy is good.
Tung's confidence has not helped quell anxiety over the territory's predicament. On a day when foreign funds fled Hong Kong, panic was triggered in smaller markets across the region.
Investors could only watch as panic sent stock prices tumbling. Analysts had assumed Hong Kong could withstand the region's currency crisis. Within moments of the stock exchange opening, they were proved wrong. The Hang Seng plummeted as much as 15%, hitting a record low. It finished the day 1,245 points down. Hong Kong stocks have now lost 25% of their value in a week.
It's really panic. Everybody just dumped their shares to get cash on hand.
The sell-off began as speculators stepped up their attack on the Hong Kong dollar, the last major Asian currency pegged to the greenback. The territory's central bank was forced to defend the currency, sending local interest rates soaring.
The rates normally around 6% and today are hovering around 150% for an overnight loan.
The crash sent shockwaves around the region. The Japanese stock market fell more than 3%, Singapore down 5%, Malaysia down 4%, the Philippines down 5%. Australian stocks also suffered, the All Ordinaries plunging 68 points or 2.5%.
What it means for the region, for Australia, is that we're going to see a period of substantially slower growth over the next year or so, and it could extend much further than that. It may extend for 2 or 3 years.
It raises issues, obviously, about the viability of the whole region when we see these continued ructions.
Because of that, analysts warn the crash could put further downward pressure on the Australian dollar. International investors have been selling the currency as they become increasingly nervous about the impact the crisis will have on the Australian economy. During the last week, the dollar has lost more than 3% of its value. Overnight, it hit a 3.5-year low against the greenback before recovering slightly.
We see over the next 1 to 2 months the Australian dollar falling to around 67 or 68 cents against the US dollar. Reason being, we have only really started the process of factoring in the implications of what's happening in Asia.
The government is more optimistic, saying the Australian currency has shown remarkable stability over the last 18 months.
Indonesia, meanwhile, is awaiting details of an International Monetary Fund rescue package for the country's economy. But analysts warn that the package isn't the complete solution to Indonesia's battered currency and stock markets.
As IMF officials labour over the final details of their rescue package, the Indonesian economy languishes in a state of limbo. Analysts say the key to the IMF's success is convincing Indonesian leaders to take the strong medicine required to cure the country's economic ills.
We have to go through with the IMF package, because if you don't go through now, once you've announced that you've gone to the IMF, I think it would have a serious effect on confidence.
The sort of measures international markets want to see Indonesia take include deeper budget cuts and removal of government subsidies, banking sector reform, including the liquidation of unstable banks, and a serious crackdown on rampant corruption and nepotism. The highly subsidised national car project run by President Suharto's younger son Tommy is seen by many as a symbol of what's gone wrong with the Indonesian economy but there are widespread doubts about the president accepting any IMF proposal to scrap the controversial scheme.
If there's too much compromise, warn the analysts, then Indonesia runs the risk of a total economic meltdown.
As for the currency freefall which sparked this crisis, even after the IMF package has been unveiled, the Indonesian rupiah is expected to remain unstable for some time yet.
There's been anger and disbelief tonight in the wake of Pol Pot's plea of innocence over Cambodia's genocide. Cambodian people who saw family members and friends killed during the Khmer Rouge period say Pol Pot is lying. In his first interview in nearly 20 years, Pol Pot says he adopted his brutal policies to protect Cambodia from Vietnam.
He's the most hated man alive, but Pol Pot has no regrets. Ending 2 decades of silence, the former Khmer Rouge leader says he was just doing his job. American journalist Nate Thayer got the historic Pol Pot interview.
He displayed little, if any, remorse on the bigger questions of his culpability for the terrible things that happened under his rule.
3 months ago, Pol Pot was tried by his own followers and sentenced to life under house arrest. It's a far cry from his days of despotic power. It was a regime based on fear, murder, starvation and overwork, killing up to 2 million Cambodians. Pol Pot says it had to be done to save the country from Vietnamese aggression. But genocide investigators have found a paper trail which proves otherwise.
There are documents which implicate the leading individuals in the Khmer Rouge regime in decisions that led to crimes against humanity.
Speaking now doesn't change history, it just reminds the world of Pol Pot's staggering brutality. The Khmer Rouge think his comments will somehow enhance their bid for a new legitimacy, but refuse to hand him over for trial, saying the 72-year-old is too ill and near death. But if he stays surrounded by deferential cadres, death will thwart attempts to bring Pol Pot to justice.
Germany has expressed disappointment tonight over America's compromise plan for fighting global warming. US President Bill Clinton has opted for a much softer line than Western Europe or Japan. The German government said the plan was inadequate, and the British environmental group Friends of the Earth said it was outraged at Mr. Clinton's proposal.
The United States produces a quarter of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. After a long debate within the White House, Bill Clinton unveiled his plan to reduce emissions, which his advisors quickly described as ambitious and bold.
Make no mistake, the problem is real, and if we do not change our course now, the consequences, sooner or later, will be destructive for America and for the world.
The Clinton administration wants greenhouse gas emissions reduced to the levels of 1990 between 2008 and 2012. Bill Clinton is offering to spend over $6 billion Australian on tax breaks for industry and to set up a national and international emissions trading system.
We must find new resolve to achieve these reductions, and to do that, we simply must commit to binding limits.
Along with a binding global agreement, the White House insists that developing countries